One of the topics that has been kind of on my mind lately is really the intersection of all these technologies that are causing a lot of change, not only in the technology spaces, but in the way we're thinking about the future of our economies
Yeah.
and well-being.
Yeah.
So a lot of potential disruption, AI, blockchain, crypto, all this stuff that we're dealing with. And you as a technologist and working in AI, with AI, all that kind of have a unique perspective on it, I think.
Yeah.
And so, where do you see everything going?
I think the entire idea of computing is going to change. I think if you look at the history of computers, right, like in the 90s, the way Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and them made their fortunes were we had these new hardware primitives. So you had the personal computer. IBM already had the personal computer, but they didn't really develop the systems that made them easy to use for consumers. And like when I first started programming, we had like DOS, which was the disk operating system, and you had like BASIC, which was like the basic language. Like nobody thought that you'd be able to build the things that you can build today. And I think what's happening is that AI and blockchain kind of represent new hardware platforms, and I don't think people always look at it that way. Like if you actually think about what AI is, it's actually tens of thousands of GPUs. If you actually think about what a blockchain is, it's actually tens of thousands of computers that are all interconnected. And what that really represents is this gigantic piece of hardware that we now have access to. And what we haven't seen yet is like, well, what does that mean for just the way we think about software in general? Like I think saying, okay, we're going to automate all of our engineering so that like we no longer have to write Python all day, that the AI is going to do it for us is a very linear and probably not correct way to think about what's actually happening. I think in the future we may see like an entirely different way of programming where like you say like, you know, distribute this message to 10 million people who all fit this criteria or like um, generate this business outcome using intelligence, artificial intelligence. So I just think the way that we interact with computers is going to change in a way that we really haven't predicted yet.
Yeah, that sounds like a relatively natural progression. I mean, isn't it just like you're abstracting away the complexity of the interaction with the computer?
That's exactly what I was trying to say. This is a better way of saying what I was trying to say, right? It's like abstraction. Like right now, we keep talking about replacements. Like how much of the human workforce can we replace with AI? And what
Right.
I'm saying is, well, what new abstractions can we create with AI? When we look at what AI and these systems actually are, we now have this new kind of hardware. It's interesting to think about what are the new abstractions that will enable us to do more versus just replacing what humans already do.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, when you do that abstraction, the abstraction alone, once it's in place, eliminates certain underlying requirements for humans to engage in labor that created the outcome. So, you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. In practice, I don't think that typically happens. I think right now it's very different, so we don't know yet. But I'll give you an example. Um, at the lowest layer of the software stack, people
Mhm.
were writing in assembly code, which was like very basic machine instructions. You may even have to go down and write binary to interact with the chips. We then brought a new abstraction, which was C. Then we brought another abstraction, which was Python. Now we have another abstraction, which is English, because we can just write it in AI and AI will generate it. That doesn't mean that people don't need to understand assembly. Because when you need to do maintenance on these systems, when you need to improve these systems, somebody has to know how that stuff works. Those people are still employed. So
Yeah.
I don't think that goes away. I think that the tools and ways that we do that work will get better and change. But it won't just go away. I mean, this stuff is all still dependent on all these other layers that go all the way down to the metal.
Yeah. I guess the other thought here is what happens when you create, let's just hypothesize artificial intelligence becomes a super intelligence that humans can't compete with that intelligence, and then that
Yeah.
intelligence is actually the one that's interacting with the other AI tools,
Yeah,
making
the lower layers.
the lower layers, making the decisions, providing the direction, and there's really no need for human engagement in those systems because it's all self-directed and self healing and self perpetuating.
I think that that's a possible outcome. I mean, it sounds like science fiction, but maybe it's possible. I mean, what you're talking about is either a god or biological software. So either we have this centralized superintelligence that can solve all problems, or we have this cellular intelligence at the layer of software such that it's all self-correcting and self-healing. Both are beautiful visions. Maybe we will get there. I don't think that we are close to that right now. But if you extrapolate out over the next couple centuries, like, yeah, maybe we'll get to the point where like software is biological and like it's all cellular and like, each individual layer has superintelligence to self-correct. That being said,
Mhm.
even if that happens, the problem that I think people are not paying attention to is these systems still have to interoperate. Many of these systems are competitive. So to think that one system that's super intelligent is going to always know how to interoperate perfectly with some other system, which is also super intelligent, but competitive because they're in the same market, I think overlooks the complexity of any system of interoperable agents. So like what I mean by that is like in the jungle, like you could have a super intelligent wasp and you could have a super intelligent flower, but like those two things have to work together at the end of the day. And so the question is not is the wasp smart enough to solve its challenge? It's what happens when you put these two things in the same competitive environment. I think the same thing's going to happen with businesses, right? We're going to have businesses that have super intelligence, but they still have to compete and interoperate with other businesses. And so it'll be interesting to see whether or not that means that free will and what humans bring to the table doesn't become even more important.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess it'll be interesting to see how it all kind of plays out. Um, as far as like the day-to-day, in your mind, are you focused on solving problems now or solving future problems?
A little bit of both. I mean, AI has made life dramatically easier for things that I already hated doing, like UX stuff and moving things around on the screen. And,
Yeah.
it's making that dramatically easier. When it comes to design, it's not as helpful. When I mean technical, what I mean by that is technical design. And the reason is because a lot of like writing prompts is the same thing as writing a design. You need to do enough research. You have to know exactly what you want. You have to kind of like specify what it is. So those two things are becoming very similar. Writing a prompt versus writing a design doc is almost the same thing for an engineer.
Hmm.
Um, in terms of like future stuff versus short-term stuff, here and there, I'll see a headline and I'll say, let me try that out and see if it's really what they say it is. Like I tried out MCP the other day, which is Model Context Protocol. And like
Hmm.
it's amazing, right? That's great. It's like, okay, I can now expose share protocol to Claude. And Claude can do things like tell me what are the top five most recent guitar tracks on Share, or
Hmm.
like build me a revenue share contract, and I can just tell it to do it with English. Fantastic. It's like, oh wow, this is really cool. I love it. At the same time, there's all these little pitfalls in practice that they don't tell you in the headlines. So now when I'm telling Claude to do it, it's making assumptions about the way that the API parameters should work. And some of those things are wrong. And so I have to correct it far more frequently than if I just did the command without AI. So it's a mix of both. It's like this is really beautiful and has so much potential. But at the same time, there are reasons that programming languages are great and so foundational. It's because they're very specific. And once you start getting into English, it's like very vague and there's so much left to interpretation.
Hmm. What do you think are the top? Let's just go with the top. What is the top problem that we should be working on in Web3? Just in the Web3 context.
Um,
Because there's a lot of other problems out there we could be focusing on, but let's just say since we have background and some expertise in the Web3 space,
Yeah.
it's a big field, right? And there's a lot of intersection with crypto. Where should where is a critical area or problem that can be solved that we should think about how are we engaging that or working on that?
The biggest problem in Web3 right now is interoperability. The fact that every day we see new blockchains and new projects popping up that are siloed, or the fact that every day we see new products popping up on different chains that are siloed and therefore can't really leverage the shared data layer, unfortunately defeats the whole purpose of Web3. So to me, that's the biggest issue. The thing that was so exciting about Web3 was when you opened OpenSea and you saw a smart contract listed on OpenSea, and then you went to another website and the same smart contract was there.
Yeah,
That was when it was like, oh my God, this is great. They're interoperable. We now have cracked this layer of the internet where things were just stuck in one company.
yeah.
To go back to that world is just very, to me, depressing when I think about like, the way I've seen Web3 going.
Couldn't it just be that that's a reflection of the state of maturity, though, where you've got a bunch of it's a bit of the still the Wild West where you've got a bunch of different competitors entering the space, trying to gain market traction, and you've got big players and small players at this point, but eventually there's going to be only a few that survive, kind of like computing platforms, personal computing platforms, right? It gets consolidated down, and
Yeah.
then those are the only environments that need to become interoperable. And you've got protocols like email that sit on top of uh, different operating systems. So, like, is it just not maybe this is just because it's so early stage and is super fragmented with a bunch of competitors in the space, and that frankly, there's not a lot of barriers to entry
Right.
to becoming a competitor,
Right.
right? Um, so maybe out of a natural process, the industry begins to consolidate. And the important thing is that you're built to operate when the winners emerge.
Yes, I think that was a beautiful analogy. My concern is that I don't know if that's very different than the internet we have today. Like corporations already give us access to APIs. You could make the case that Instagram and TikTok are already interoperable because they're the winners in social and they've made public APIs, right?
Yeah, but I think it's a little bit different with respect to where the value accrues, right? So there's the information layer, but then there's like where's this uh and through APIs you can share information, but it's actually where's the value accruing in those systems. So rather back to the whole central intermediaries, the ones that the entity that's providing the service, it actually accrues to I guess a decentralized community of
Yeah.
participants, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, that is the vision. I think that maybe, and what I think you're getting at is that interoperability is a second order effect, and what really matters is the funding and the incentives. Because if the networks are owned by the users, and if in the end a few win, then as long as those survivors are interoperable, then we still can achieve the vision of Web3.
yeah, yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
a compelling argument.
Yeah. Let's just jump back to this other topic, like on the AI stuff, because we talked about this a little bit earlier about all right, so you have AI which can displace some amount of labor.
Yep.
Right? And I guess my viewpoint is why not all labor? Why do humans need to have labor? Is that a necessity that humans do labor? And I'm thinking not only manual labor, but like intellectual labor,
Mhm.
knowledge labor. Because I think what we're seeing from my estimation is you've got AI is kind of a a uh, a new technology that becomes a knowledge worker,
Hmm.
a new tool right now, potentially an intelligence that replaces some form of human knowledge labor. So why not replace all? Can we replace all human labor with AI labor?
Hmm. I mean, I don't think I can make the claim that that won't happen. Um, I think it's a question of time, and it's a question of how we define labor. I think that, if we go back in time, even if you look at like just the animal kingdom, like you don't really see animals working for other animals. What you see is animals working for whatever it is they need within the environment. So, I guess if you take the view that all problems will be solved, all technical problems will be solved by AI, then the only work left to do is to like get up and walk over to the computer and type in what you need. Like, is that
Or
the
should they voice it, right?
that's the
Hey,
world we want? There's
here's
a
what I
movie.
need.
There's a movie about this called The Matrix, right? Have you
Yeah,
seen?
exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, why is that not a possibility? I think it is, right? Like to me, that's a possibility. Like it accelerates to such a point where you start to say, well, what do we actually as humans need to engage in? And maybe it's not work. Maybe we don't need to engage in work.
Well, the bigger question is like, what are we working for right now? What are we doing? Money, right? We're working for money. So if it's not even about AI, if we all just had unlimited money or like enough resources, would there be any?
Resources. Yeah. I mean, it's about resource allocation and survival to a certain point, right?
Exactly. So I think what you may be saying is like, look, the end state of this might be abundance. And it's so abundant that we don't need to do work. And so therefore, what is it that matters in the end? And
Yeah.
I think it's a personal question, right? It's like, and I ask this a lot, I say, how would you spend your time if all technical and creative problems were solved? Right? That's a tough thing. It's a tough thing for people to answer. A lot of people say, like, I would be creative. Um, But then you look at tools like Suno and you're like, no, no, AI is going to do that too. But the question becomes, what is it that you want to create, not how do you create it? And I think what it should come down to is people spending more time thinking about what to do, not how to do it in a limitless, abundant environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's an interesting paradigm that we live in where it's one because of um, our own ability or inability to efficiently extract resources and distribute resources that we find ourselves under constraint, right? The constraints of just living on the planet,
Hmm.
being able to do that in a way where it's let's call it like comfortable or something, a certain state of being.
Hmm.
Um, but if you do, like you're pointing out, if you have abundance in that situation, what is it that we're actually doing in that environment? I kind of think like, okay, if you can get beyond resource constraint, if you can get beyond having to even think about those things, you open up a new paradigm where you have a net new way of living that doesn't look like this way of living.
Yeah, it's the old way. I mean, this is where the formless vision statement comes from, illuminating true human purpose through technology. When we came up with that years ago, it was because we saw, okay, AI and tech more generally are advancing so fast. What is
Yeah.
the role of the human in the end? And I think increasingly what we're seeing is that it's really human connection. It's really the human story and the connection with each other which, whether you're religious or not, was like kind of what we had in the Garden of Eden. Like that was what the beginning was. It was the connection between humans. It was the connection between humans and nature. It wasn't let me get up and put on, my slacks and go type all day. And I think that we're so used to that now. But the reason we called the company Formless was because we were saying like, are our jobs really our identity? Or is it just something that we're doing right now because of the time period that we live in?
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. And I think that if you can break out of that ex an existing constraint model, which, in my mind, maybe AI is an enabler to break out of the constraints, right? That if we're using it correctly, if we're using that kind of artificial intelligence correctly, then that's possible. Then you're talking about probably a new realm of discovery where you're gaining a deeper understanding of what human connection genuinely is. Like
Yeah.
sometimes for me, it's a little bit bothersome when in this period of time we've just basically discovered digital devices, right? Within the last 25 years, and now everybody has a digital device, and we spend more time looking at our digital device probably than actual human faces in our everyday interactions or
Yeah.
computer screens like we're doing now. But it's like getting back to those fundamental things about being human.
Yeah. Yeah.
It frees us up from doing because now we're not focused on figuring out how to get distributing resources the right way. It's being done for us in that environment.
One interesting thing about the world we live in is the way competition affects everything. So like
Yeah.
right now we're assuming that, everything is the way it is plus AI.
Yeah.
But like if it goes the way that you're saying, where we have access to this super intelligence and it's democratized so that like everybody has access to it, well then I should be able to generate the blueprint for a phone that's competitive with iPhone. And I should be able to produce it at far less cost. And if that's the case, then we should be able to see far more competition in the market for different types of experiences. And maybe we can unlock what I think people have been trying to unlock for a long time. Is there a technical solution that gives us the benefits of computing without all the addiction and other things that we get from being on screens all day? Maybe there's actually an answer to this that AI can help us get to. When I think about like redesigning operating system or redesigning things like the iPhone, these things are limited based on intelligence because it's just such a heavy task to do. But now, if we start to get access to these resources, then maybe there's a way in which we can just redesign the world.
Yeah. I yeah, I think so. I was thinking about this a little bit. Like, okay, so I'm going to call it like a post-labor economy
Yeah.
where labor is not something that humans engage in post-labor. And I'm thinking this is almost like a utopia type of situation. Then what is the thing of value from humans, right? The thing of value, I think, is, and it's kind of weird, but I think it's attention. Where you actually spend your time and what you give attention to is the actual value generator. So what experiences you engage in
Hmm.
is what matters in that type of a world. So you're trying to attract attention. And all goods and services are basically free to produce because the labor cost is next to zero from AI. So
Yep.
the only thing that you're doing is you're creating human experiences that are of the most benefit to humanity. That's what becomes the value generator. And where you spend that attention is more like your currency. That attention is what's worth uh, money to, or not money, but has value to everybody.
Hmm.
So post labor, I call it like a attention economy, a participation economy rather than a labor-based economy. It
Hmm.
comes about where you're participating. That's how you're showing up in the world rather than defining yourself by labor. It's what do you actually do with your time and attention?
Hmm.
So maybe that's a paradigm where that's how you're defining yourself. And you kind of see that to some degree when people are not defining themselves by their job, they're defining themselves by what they do. They just don't get uh, necessarily rewarded or valued for that as they
Hmm.
would in a labor economy.
Hmm.
So that's just a concept that I'm toying around with in my head.
I mean, I think we're seeing a lot of that today, right? Like the attention economy is a thing, and I think that as this trend continues, attention will become increasingly valuable. I think it's a little bit scary. It's a little bit of a dystopian outcome if we're saying that, how long can you keep somebody glued? I don't think this is what you're saying, but if it becomes the case that you're trying to optimize for how long you can keep somebody glued to the screen because that's the only value that they have,
No, no, I'm saying this is post. This is almost like post interface.
outpost interface.
But yeah, it's like after we get beyond this idea that we need to look at screens,
Yeah.
attention won't be captured through the device. Attention will actually be captured in human experiences,
All right, I
shared
got a different take.
experience.
I got a
Yeah,
different take. So one, I think that what you're saying is true. I want to maybe mix it so it's a hybrid because I think distribution becomes increasingly important. I think that's connected to attention as AI continues to reduce the cost of labor.
yeah.
Um, I also think that discovery becomes incredibly valuable. So I think that it will be less about production and more about discovery. I think that we're seeing that now with music. Spotify has so many songs now, and it's so abundant that really the value is when your friend finds some dope stuff and sends it to you. I think similarly, like with planet exploration, as we get into space, I think similarly with software, discovering great things that have been created and discovering novel ways to integrate them together. I would like to think that it's going to be a mix of attention, which I would hope becomes more like connection, like a connection economy and a discovery economy.
Hmm. Yeah. I kind of think of discovery as one of those things that gets solved for, like through AI. Like
Yeah, I
if
mean,
I need it, it's there.
no, the beautiful thing is that, and this is nice because math proves it. I mean, there will always be an infinite set of combinations of things.
Yeah.
So no, it doesn't matter how smart AI becomes, you can always take an answer that AI gives you and add one to it forever. So there will always be new things to discover in the space of creativity and knowledge. So it's almost about the perception of humans to sift through things and to say this is gold and this is not.
Yeah. Do you remember, and I'm just gonna remember the orbit back in the day?
Yeah, yeah,
Like the whole point of that was to get people into live spaces, discover the live space as fast as possible that you were supposed to be in.
yeah.
Um, that when I think of discovery, I think of that. Like, what do I need to, how do I optimize for where the right place is supposed to be for
Yeah,
me in
yeah,
that moment in time?
yeah, yeah.
Like closing that gap. Because right now it requires tools, it requires energy, it requires search. But if that could happen
Right,
instantly,
right.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, so what you're saying is, if there was a way to give the intelligence enough information about me, then it should be able to discover what venue I should go to dinner tonight or what bar, right? Which is
Yeah,
like definitely
yeah,
for context. But what I'm saying is like, yeah, that I think that is a solved problem. I mean, that's like kind of solved without AI just based on ratings. I mean, I think that works pretty well when I look at like, restaurant recommendations and like what people say is great. Like I go and I'm happy. I'm talking about like in the space of infinite possibility. Like if we're talking about discovery of places, like 30
yeah.
restaurants in New York, yeah, I think you're right. Intelligence.
Well, not necessarily like places, like energy, like the whole dynamic, right? The social dynamic, whatever however you quantify that. Like the place is good, the food's good, whatever, but
Yeah.
like right time, right place is one of those things that we all want, but how do we know where we're supposed to be? Is there a better place to be than here right now? Maybe there's a more optimal
Yeah.
place.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. It's not a mathematical question because it's subjective. I mean, I could tell you that this restaurant is quantitatively better for you to go than that restaurant, but you could choose the latter and
Yeah.
meet the love of your life because of the actual experience that you two have talking about how bad that restaurant is. So the idea that we're going to solve these problems by saying well, let's optimize based on these proxy metrics and like put me in this restaurant because it's going to make my life better is a flawed way to think about life because you could go to a worse restaurant and have a better outcome just by bonding with somebody over the fact that it's a bad restaurant. You could meet the person that you actually need to meet. So I think there's a
This
limit.
is one of those, that's like one of those things we would never know.
Yeah.
Because maybe if you didn't go to that restaurant, you went to the other one, something.
Well, it's possible you could go to the better restaurant, but then you have more competition, right? You have more competition, you have more people like you who are there. You might not get the
Yeah.
experience that you think. But this question is like at the root of the problem that a lot of artists have with AI, which is that the minute you take a subjective thing like art and then you rank it based on objective metrics like numbers, what you start to do is just get the average because you start to just recommend the stuff that everybody likes. Or you recommend the things based on my history. Well, I've liked a lot of things like this, so you're going to recommend another thing like that. But a lot of the best moments in art are when we discover something that we weren't supposed to like, but it feels good.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beauty of art. That's why artists are so outraged at a lot of the things that are happening right now with technology.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. Yeah, it's a big opportunity space for sure. Um,
So
with
let
AI,
me,
with
let
all
me
these.
ask you, so do you think right now AI is net good or net bad for everyday people, not for tech entrepreneurs, for everyday people, working class people, who have jobs, XYZ. Is this a good thing or a bad thing?
I mean, it depends on what we want to be doing as a society, right? Do we want jobs? Like, that's the thing. This is the frame. Like, there's this, for some reason, it's kind of odd to me that, yeah, in the labor economy, the construct is you need to have a job to survive, right? But if you go a step beyond that, well, what if it was possible that we all had a high standard of living without jobs? Would we still want jobs? Would we still just be like, oh, I really want to work? Hope the employment rate goes up, but you're fine without it? Like,
Hmm.
I think that that's kind of it's a bit of it can be it can because of that whole constraint model, we're just living that. We're living out that pattern. We're conditioned to want this stuff, but I don't think people want jobs at the end of the day. I think we want something better than jobs.
If you had
You know
asked
what I
me
mean?
when I was younger, I would have said, oh, like, I mean, last thing I want is a job, right? But I think all of us, I mean, I'm sure you feel this way too. You feel fulfillment out of purpose. Now, maybe that
Purpose,
purpose
not
isn't,
jobs.
yeah, maybe that
Purpose.
purpose isn't supposed to be your job, but we feel fulfillment out of purpose. My fundamental argument is that the idea that the amount of work to be done is finite and therefore AI is going to color in the entire box and we'll have nothing left to do is the wrong way to think about it. I think that AI makes the box bigger. I think there's going to be so much more to do. We mentioned this in another conversation. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of engineers sit around all day and do nothing but prevent software from breaking. So what I'm saying is, if we can get rid of that stuff and then enable the human mind to imagine and innovate and discover what else we could be building if not for that debt, that's where you get the skyscraper of software. And we haven't seen
Yeah.
that yet.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So what I'm saying is I think that I do think that there'll be a world where AI does everything labor. It'll do all of that. But outside of that box, there's something different, and it's not labor. It's human creativity, it's human ingenuity, thinking
But why is
of
that not labor? Like what I'm saying is once that box gets all colored in by AI, it just creates new things that need to get done.
what I'm saying is I think AI will do that too. It'll be able to do that. The thing that you're pointing out in the earlier in the conversation was the things that um, can't be programmed, like serendipitous moments in life, right?
Mhm.
Where the unexpected stuff happens. I think what what it opens up humans to do is to have more of those type of moments, is to unload the means of production and execution and be net expansive beyond what we do now.